Hello, Gabe. Your first question today is AB Samahan bases our ideals on our four pillars, all encompassed by culture. As CoCo, how will you implement more culture learning objectives into our GBMs and or events?
Yeah, so I would start with upholding the cultural reports and sort of collaborating with the other pillars into incorporating their visions within the cultural reports as well. And for example, or sorry, for example, with social, we can also like create events in which we can showcase. Sorry, hold on, let me restart. I'm getting the nerves. Sorry, pause. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, of course. AB Samahan bases our ideals on our four pillars, all encompassed by culture. As CoCo, how will you implement more culture learning objectives into GBMs and or events?
Right, yeah. So I would first start with the cultural reports. And within the cultural reports, we could talk about various aspects of Filipino culture, and it's actually our job in doing so. And so making sure that we are passionate and in providing that knowledge is a big step in that direction. And furthermore, I could collaborate with the other pillars. Like for example, with social, we could create more socials incorporating social events. Like for example, we could create a social in which we highlight Filipino films or Filipino like books or anything that basically encompasses or captures that essence of culture. For political, we could create events where we highlight some of the various issues within our community that affect our culture, like racism and xenophobia, especially in this day and age. And furthermore, with community, I feel like community is I could collaborate with community into providing various other community building workshops and community service volunteering events into our cultural reports. Like for example, there's a Philam Fest in San Diego, and we could promote that within our cultural reports. So I feel like we could make big steps into both improving and delivering that cultural aspect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabe, for that answer. For your next question, there's an ongoing discussion regarding the Filipino-American identity and how we, as Filipino Americans, make use of the many individual cultures of the Philippines. With the current discourse in mind, how do you plan on addressing and contributing to the conversation?
So I feel like there is discourse between Filipino American and Filipino culture, Filipino indigenous culture. And I think it's important to make sure that we highlight the differences and sort of the similarities between the two and respect the differences, because our differences are what make us human, right? And our differences are beautiful. And so highlighting the differences and sort of making sure that people are enlightened about various aspects of both Filipino and indigenous Filipino culture and Filipino American culture is important. Like, for example, I think it's important to make sure that we include sort of these aspects of Filipino indigenous culture within the cultural reports of the spring semester, like for during FCN season, because for FCN, I am planning to incorporate cultural dances within next year's FCN, but or at least our rendition of cultural dances within next year's FCN. And I think it's important to make sure that we know why we're dancing and we know the reason why the indigenous culture dances as well. And so in doing that, I think creating providing that knowledge within the cultural reports solves two problems. It solves that problem, making sure that we as an organization identify those differences and similarities within a Filipino American and Filipino indigenous culture. And it's also solves the problem of making sure that there are cultural reports within the spring semester during FCN season. And furthermore, during we could enlighten those outside of our organization as well, and from those that come to FCN. For by like putting information about these cultural dances and aspects and sort of why the significance of these dances that we perform within the flyers that we hand out during FCN. So, and we can incorporate that those differences and sort of we can acknowledge that those differences within the script of FCN as well. So there are various ways we can go about into sort of mitigating this discourse between Filipino and Filipino Filipino-American culture. And I believe we should really take our time to, you know, sort of solve these issues, because these are issues that are relevant and are valid.
Hi, Gabriel. So for your first question from the audience, what will you do outside of Samahan to ensure that the greater STSU community becomes enriched and educated on the complex beauty of the Filipinx people?
Right, yeah. What I plan to do is collaborate with community into making sure that we provide community service. Like I said before, community service, volunteer events, or just events that highlight Filipino culture into collaborate with community into highlighting those events, to make sure that we as an organization understand that, and also we show up, because those type of events that happen outside of our organization are the events that are most important in regards, or at least have importance in regards to our position, because those are really the events that were really like highlight our Filipino culture into the greater community of San Diego. And so highlighting like FilAmFest or other events such as that within the San Diego community is important. And furthermore, I would collaborate with PR and media team to make sure that our events, make sure that events that the cultural affairs coordinators host are sort of reached, reach reach the attention of those outside of our organization and outside of really our school and into the greater San Diego community. And, you know, creating events, I think it's also important to create fun events that can gather a lot of people. Like, for example, I am thinking about creating an event where we sort of create or cook leche flan. And from that, I can explain that the sort of the Spanish colonial aspects of leche flan and American imperial aspects of leche flan, because obviously flan, it comes from Spain, but it's also leche flan is also influenced by American culture, simply because of the canned foods. America did imperialize the Philippines and brought in some of their culture, including canned foods. And now we as Filipinos use canned evaporated milk and canned condensed milk within our leche flan. And so from that, we can like branch off into talks about, you know, imperialism and Spanish colonialism within the Philippines. And I feel like an event such as that really encapsulates AB Samahan. It's 4 pillars, because academic, we are really teaching others about like our culture and teaching others how to cook aspects of our culture. Political, because we're discussing sort of the effects of colonialism and imperialism within it. Social, within the Philippines. Social, because we're really like bringing together people and making sure that they bond and have that connection with each other. And community, we like for these events, like we could collaborate with community and make sure that those outside of our community come to these events. And so, and like, who doesn't want to come to an event cooking leche flan? And having these type of events is I think the best way to make sure that our culture is sort of brought up in outside of just our organization and into the greater SDSU or San Diego community.
Thank you. And then for your second question from the audience, FCN is a big part of this role and it involves communicating with multiple individuals, planning ahead, and finding creative solutions. Please give an example of a time where you have demonstrated these skills.
Yeah, as per my speech, I mean, I spent a lot of time collaborating with other people into making sure that collaborating with other people into making sure that we sort of highlighted Filipino culture into what at least our community and the San Francisco community within our community within our high school and the San Francisco community. But me personally, I wasn't really sort of an official coordinator of those type of events, but really those type of events relied upon really constant communication and dedication and sort of creativity within creating or like enlightening others about our community. Like for example, like within the 2019 freshman orientation, I spent pretty much all of August going every day to our high school and sort of how do I put this, practicing and creating our Tinickling choreography and sort of refining our Tinickling choreography for around an hour a day, like or at least in my memory. So having that and like sort of collaborating with others and making sure that we communicated and sort of communicated our differences and where we sort of and our differences in our vision for the choreography. I think that was important, and sort of it's an example of how I was able to communicate with others. And like this also goes with the fact that I volunteered in our high school cleanup day, which is different from our high school world fair. In our high school cleanup day, we basically spent one day over the weekend just cleaning up our high school, and it required a lot of communication with my fellow classmates that attended that event, because it really required sort of how do I put this, a cooperative event, cooperative sort of aspect to it, and it required a lot of organization within those that attended. And so I was able to from that I was able to actually repaint our courtyard, like the floor of our courtyard, and sort of like go around and clean up the school. And then also regarding the World Cultural Fair, that required a lot of effort and communication as well, because whenever I volunteered, I was heavily involved with that World Fair. And so I was sort of the cashier, and I was handing out the money or not handing, like taking the money and handing out the change. And so that required a lot of communication because it was very hectic. And a lot of people were buying a lot of things. And so that required a lot of communication between me and the other people that volunteering at that event, sort of to sort of make sure that we gave other people the right food, the right amount of food, and we received the actual right amount of money as well. And that I think those are really good examples of how I was able to collaborate with others and and sort of communicate with others and have that uh, creative aspect to it because of the refining of the Tinickling choreo for 2019. So thank you.